How MEXICA works. Chapter 3. Building Knowledge Structures. This is the general organization of MEXICA. In this chapter, we are going to focus in how the system builds its knowledge structures. The chapter is divided in 3 sections: contextual knowledge structures, tensional representation, and concrete representation. We are going to start with the contextual knowledge structures. A contextual structure is a set of emotional links and tensions that represent situations in the story world. They always have associated actions that represent logical ways to face such a situation. This is an example. In this case, character A is in love with character B. Something logical to do is that character A buys flowers to B, A writes a love poem to B, A serenades B. The system gets from the dictionary of story actions and the previous stories all the information it needs to build its knowledge structures. I will explain how MEXICA processes a previous story. Let's imagine that we have the following tale. Jaguar Knight has an accident. Princess heals Jaguar Knight. Jaguar Knight rewards Princess. The system performs the first action in the story, that is, it triggers its post-condition. In this case, the tension Jaguar Knight is injured, that is, held at risk. This information is recorded in a structure known as story context. Next, the system performs the second action in the tale. Princess heals Jaguar Knight. Now, the story context is updated, so the tension held at risk is deactivated, and now a new emotional link that shows that Jaguar Knight is very grateful towards the princess is activated. Next, the system performs the third action in the story. Jaguar Knight rewards Princess. Again, the story context is updated, so now both the princess and the Jaguar Knight are very grateful towards each other. This process continues until the story ends. In this way, in MEXICA, a story can be seen as a sequence of actions or as a sequence of story contexts that change over story time. With this information, the system builds its knowledge structure. Let's explain how it works. MEXICA takes the first story context in the tale and the action that follows such a story context. Then it substitutes concrete characters for variables and copies all this information into memory. In this way, we have a contextual structure and its associated action. MEXICA takes the second story context and the following action in the story. It substitutes concrete characters for variables and copies this information into memory. In this way, we have our second contextual structure and its associated action. This process is repeated until the story finishes. In this example, we ended with 2 structures in memory. The first represents that when the health of character A is at risk, something logical to happen is that character B heals character A, and that when character A is very grateful towards character B, something logical to do is that character A rewards character B. All these structures are gathered together in what we refer to as contextual memory. Let's analyze a second example of a previous story. Jaguar Knight has an accident. Warrior mocks Jaguar Knight. Jaguar Knight insults Warrior, and so on. MEXICA performs the first action and generates the first story context. Notice that this story context is identical to the first story context in the previous example. That is, we already have in memory a representation of it. Rather than duplicating the information, MEXICA employs what it has already created. Let me explain how the system does this. MEXICA substitutes concrete characters for variables in the first story context and in the following action. We can see in the bottom a visual representation of the situation. Then it realizes that in memory there is an equal structure. So what it does is to copy the following action, in this case mocks, into the list of associated actions of the structure in memory. As a result of this process, the contextual structure 1 has increased the number of its associated actions. In this way, when the health of character A is at risk, the system can either perform the action B heals A or perform B mocks A. One of the most interesting characteristics of the contextual structure is that it allows gathering together actions with completely different intentions, even contradictory intentions, but that nevertheless make sense in that context. The number of the contextual structures and their associated actions depends on the number and characteristics of the previous stories. Tensional representation. The second important knowledge structure is the set of tensional representations. I have talked about this in a previous video. Each of the previous stories has associated its own tensional representation. As you can see in these examples, all they have up and downs of the value of tension. However, their shape can change from one story to the other. Concrete representation. The third knowledge representation is formed by a copy of the set of the previous stories and the dictionary of story actions. They are used to break impasses, as I will explain in a following video. This is the end of chapter 3. Please go ahead with the next chapter.